The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the guest's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of AIHA. AIHA does not endorse any guest or the entity that they represent. On this episode of Healthier Workplaces, AIHA's Improving Exposure Judgment Initiative, we're joined by Michelle Twilley and John Mulhausen. Stay with us.
At AIHA, we believe healthier workplaces start with investing in the future of occupational health and safety. By donating to the American Industrial Hygiene Foundation, you will help support scholarships, grants, and resources that empower the next generation of industrial hygiene and OEHS professionals. Every donation makes a difference, whether it's helping a student achieve their dreams or driving impactful research that protects workers worldwide. Join us in creating safer, healthier workplaces. Donate today at aiha.info/donate-AIHF and make an impact that lasts a lifetime.
We're joined today on the Healthier Workplaces show by John Mulhausen, who is the past president of AIHA, and Michelle Twilley, who is the chief science officer for AIHA. Welcome, both of you. Great topic, talking about some of the evolving issues in OEHS. And I guess we'll start out by asking you, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges OEHS professionals face when it comes to communicating concepts effectively in today's global landscape, which is evolving quite rapidly? I'll go to you first, John.
I think our biggest challenge is explaining to them what we do and their role in helping us do what we do. That, you know, our roles in protecting workers depend on many partners in the workplaces. And until they can understand how it is that we're systematically working through understanding and managing exposures and the important roles that they play in helping with that, whether it's the basic characterization, helping us understand what's happening in the workplace, whether it's putting in place controls or understanding how controls work in the workplaces, they have important roles to play. And by putting in place a systematic approach to understanding exposures and moving forward to manage exposures, it gives us the template that we can use to talk to our colleagues in the workplace so that they understand better what it is that we're doing and what their roles are in ensuring a safe and healthy workplace.
Michelle, what are some of the things that you see as, we're coming in from the 5,000-foot view, but on the bigger challenges?
Yeah, so I think we're really good at communicating about industrial hygiene to other industrial hygienists. And I think our challenge is really communicating to the corporate level, the C-suite level, of all the value that we bring as industrial hygiene and occupational hygiene specialists, and that we are there to help manage that labor force that we have, that we rely on for our production, and that any benefit that we can give to the worker through enhancements in worker health is also something that will enhance the bottom line. So we need to do a better job at communicating with the C-suite in a language that they understand.
So we're seeing generational shifts in the workforce now, a rise of Generation Z alongside of an aging professional community, which I'm part of. How do we ensure effective communication and knowledge sharing between these groups of professionals?
Well, I think part of the Improving Exposure Judgments initiative is outreach to our training institutions to help them ensure that they have the right type of training, because the training on the statistical tools that are important for making accurate exposure decisions, the training on the models that help us make more accurate decisions, is not something that is traditionally taught in many of our training institutions. And so we're reaching out to help them understand the free resources available from AIHA, whether they're PowerPoint slides or canned webinars that they can have the students take. All of those resources are available to ensure that our new graduates are hitting the ground running with the tools that they need to really manage exposures in a very complex workplace where ad hoc approaches really don't work anymore.
Makes sense. Again, Michelle, coming in as AIHA's, chief science officer, you're probably faced with these concepts a lot, right? Dealing with, communicating to totally different generational sectors of professionals in the industry, right?
Oh, absolutely. And, I'm a Gen Xer, so I learned, like my boomer counterparts, the rote in class didactic methods for learning and through experience. And have to recognize that our way of learning has shifted away from those methods to online presence, to, you know, dealing with remote learning, asynchronous learning, talking to students across platforms that we're not used to dealing with. So it is something that has changed. I do love working with the younger folks in that I always learn so much. And sometimes it's about a new technique or a new process or a new way of doing things, a new thought of using different statistical methods that I wouldn't have training in otherwise. So I think we can learn up and down through the generations if we're open to it.
Excellent.
Boy, one of the things, Bob, that Michelle and I are really excited about are the principles of good practice. So Michelle talked about the fact that our profession is very broad, and we tend to rely on learning while on the job. So these principles of good practice are little summaries of the critical practices that need to be put in place to ensure that workers are adequately protected. So they become kind of a quick start guide for new graduates, for new people entering the profession. We have 3 of them published now, one on occupational exposure assessment, one on noise and hearing conservation, and one on respiratory protection programs, and a couple more on the way. And those are beautiful resources for both people newly coming into the profession as quick start guides for, here's the summary of the core things that I should be working on in my workplaces. And for those of us that are more seasoned to sort of use as a checklist for continuous improvement.
In regions with limited infrastructure or expertise, what are some of the practical ways to communicate some of these critical OEHS concepts to both workers and the decision makers? How do we do that? Michelle, I'll let you start on it.
Good question. So we all go through our learning process as we are fine-tuning our skill set, and we fine-tune the messages that we're going to share with others about what we're doing. And we find ourselves communicating to different levels. We communicate one way to the workforce and maybe another way to the CEO of the corporation. So we do have to be mindful of who we're talking to and when. The PGPs, or the principles of good practice that John just mentioned, are an outstanding way to, first off, self-assess your knowledge base and your skill set, and then learn more about those critical tools that you could be using. And at the end of the day, work on crafting that message that will help you kind of sell, for lack of a better term, what you're trying to achieve to management.
These strategies are meant to be both effective, good at recognizing unacceptable exposures and putting in place the management to manage the controls to manage those exposures, but also very efficient. So part of the advantage of the systematic approach is that it directs the few resources that we have available. Nobody is telling me that they've got way more money to spend than they know what to do with. So we need to be as effective and efficient as we can be in our approaches. And these approaches are much more efficient in that we better understand where we need to spend our monitoring money, our control money, those little few resources that are available to us to ensure that the workers are well protected.
Excellent. Uh, the emerging technologies like AI, IoT, some of the big data capabilities that we have, they're transforming industries. So how can OEHS professionals use these type of tools to enhance their communication strategies and perhaps make safety concepts more accessible to the workforce and even the general public for that matter? How do you see that, Michelle? Thoughts on it?
AIHA is working to address this head on with the formation of the Data and AI Transformation Exchange Working Group. So that's a new group. It's actually a merger of our emerging digital technologies and our Technology Initiative Strategic Advisory Group. We are also working on the AI policy for the association. So we recognize that AI is going to be transformational to the practice of industrial hygiene. It's a tool like anything else that we can use to better protect worker health. It is also something that would likely benefit us in managing these large data sets that we're getting from sensor technology and looking for trends in that data, even if they are micro trends, or maybe there's something that would be associated with drift or issues with the sensor function and calibration. So that is still yet to be seen how that's going to work. We do have an individual who is tackling the idea of taking a large data set from sensor data and using the statistical tools in AIHStat.
Are you ready to elevate your knowledge and career in 2024? AIHA University's e-learning subscription has you covered. With the full subscription, you gain access to 24 contact hours of expert-led education throughout the year. Participate live in our exclusive AIHA University webinars, or catch the recordings at your convenience. It's designed to fit your schedule and your goals. From cutting-edge tools to essential OEHS insights, the AIHA e-learning subscription delivers the latest trends, technologies, and best practices to keep you at the top of your field. Don't wait to unlock your potential. Visit aiha.info/e-learning sub and subscribe today.
Personally, I would find it very, very exciting to be starting my career right now, because I think the artificial intelligence tools are going to help us tremendously understand our workplaces, our exposures, and help us ensure that we're better managing those workplaces, because we can envision where the process controls that every manufacturing plant relies on are going to get smarter and smarter and smarter. And we can take advantage of that information in addition to the information that Michelle talked about to bring together a more holistic picture of the worker machine agent interface and how that influences exposures on a minute by minute, second by second basis, and make sure that we've got the right controls targeted at the right place.
And certainly one of the things AI is going to give us the ability to do is to be able to, I think, more streamline the process of analyzing this big data that we're getting. We capture all this data, but trying to manually review this stuff is, daunting at best. So that should be interesting. Um, to shift gears a little, many industries, I think, still view safety as an added cost rather than a really, an integral part of their operations. What type of communication strategies can OEHS professionals use to change this mindset when it occurs, and be able to demonstrate that value of proactive safety measures as opposed to being reactive and dealing after you have a crisis? How do we get from that point to where we want to be and being proactive?
Well, part of the answer Michelle talked about, which is to remind people that these things affect the bottom line. If you have a severe industrial hygiene or safety incident, you're going to have lines shut down, maybe even plants shut down as a result of that outcome. The investigation, the regulatory follow-up, the need to fix whatever it was that caused the issue. Those are extremely disruptive and very, very costly in the short term and in the long run, as plants get shut down and need to be put back up and running. So there's that material cost. There's also the human aspect, and I firmly believe that plant managers don't want people hurt in their workplaces, and that one of the approaches that we need to continue to take is that human aspect, to emphasize with people, look, these are our fellow workers out in our factory, and we don't want them overexposed. We don't want them at risk. And here are the things that we can be doing together to ensure that those risks are adequately addressed.
Michelle?
Yeah, and I think John's point illustrates the critical need for OEHS professionals to communicate the risk that exists in the workplace. Borrowing from public health is the adage that when public health is working, and in this case, when industrial hygiene is working effectively, nothing ever happens. And I think the fallacy then is that upper management might look at it and say, like, why are we spending all this money on these things and nothing happens? And that's a good thing. We don't want anything to happen, but we also don't want to be found obsolete because we're not effectively communicating that these interventions that we are bringing to the workplace are working. We want to make sure we are communicating that these are successes. And not seeing accidents and injuries is a success.
And Bob, that highlights the importance of the systematic approach that AIHA is advocating, because that systematic approach allows us to show the plant managers, the operations managers, the workers, exactly what it is that we're doing to understand the exposures in the workplace and manage those exposures. And when we have those systematic approaches, when they're out where people can look at them, when we're transparent about it, they can engage in it. They begin to understand why it is that we are, out there measuring exposures, why it is that we are talking to the engineers about how those processes run, why it is that we're talking to the plant managers about why we want to move out of personal protective equipment into a higher level of control. And so these systematic, transparent approaches facilitate communication with the people in the plant during those times when things are running well, so that they understand, wow, all these things have to happen to make sure that things continue to run well, to continue not to have overexposures, not to have safety issues. So the systematic, transparent approaches facilitate communication with the plant personnel that are critical to ensuring that those processes run smoothly.
Our workplaces are definitely becoming more globalized and culturally diverse. What are some of the key principles for effectively communicating OEHS concepts across different cultural and linguistic contexts? Because that obviously can be challenging, just with vernacular, just the language. How do we communicate, and how do people, how do we do this in these broadening workplaces? Thoughts?
Workers are important. Your fellow workers are important. People are important. So my approach has always been to start with the human aspect. We value our employees. Our employees provide a lot of value for our business. They are our fellows, they are our partners, and we want to make sure that they are well protected as they go through their job, these very important jobs in our workplaces. And here's how we're going to do that together.
I know we have a lot of challenges here. One of the last projects I did as a consultant before joining AIHA was in a facility that was packaging hand sanitizer for COVID response. And at one point in time, we counted 22 different languages within the workforce that was hired. These were all gig workers. They were hired in to do the job, and connecting with them was very difficult. They were there for that day. They were afraid that if they said anything or complained about anything, that they wouldn't be invited back the next day, and they really needed that job. So as John said, connecting with people on a human level is extremely important. And I think once you make that connection and people see that you're there to help and that you're there to protect them and get them home safely, it goes a long way. So that really hasn't changed any.
Lifelong learning and workforce development are often cited as essential for the future of OEHS. So how do we communicate the importance of these efforts to inspire both current professionals and the next generation? And I'm going to throw that to you first, John, and Michelle, I'll let you take the wrap up on that one.
Yeah, no, great question. I'm going back to principles of good practice, because that's one of the reasons we are pulling them together. As we, as seasoned professionals or people brand new to the profession, our profession covers such a broad range of hazards, a broad range of issues, that it becomes very difficult for any individual practitioner to keep up with all of the changes in the science, all the changes in the appropriate approaches. So the principles of good practice are being developed exactly to address that concern, Bob. The principles of good practice are concise descriptions of the critical few practices that we should be putting in place in our workplaces in order to ensure reasonable protection for workers. And we're developing them for many different domains or areas of industrial hygiene practice, so that as practitioners, whether again they're seasoned or brand new to the profession, as they encounter an area of practice, they can pull up that summary description of key practices, tick through them, and ensure that they're putting those things in place out in their workplaces to ensure protection for the workers.
Michelle, so how do we communicate these important things?
Yeah, so I think that as an IH, we learn a lot of things, and we're really happy to demonstrate our knowledge. But you do need to be a life learner, and you need to be somewhat plastic, not as rigid as you would expect to be in hard sciences, but you need to be a little bit more plastic and flexible and learn and be open to new ideas and new principles, and kind of self-assess and check what you know against what is established best practice. And it's interesting that the people that have worked on the principles of good practice within their volunteer groups, they've come back almost every time and said, wow, I learned so much having gone through this process, that I didn't know that other people saw these things differently than I do, or maybe their practice required them to do something differently than the way I do it in my practice. And it allowed for that growth and that expansion of thought in helping prepare the principles of good practice. So I see the power in this tool to help people navigate what they need to know, what they already know against what maybe they need to change a little bit or tweak, and have that personal growth occur. So that's one. Being a life learner, we can't know it all in this profession. We just can't. There's so many different, what they used to call rubrics of practice, that if you want to immerse yourself in something new, you can. So you do have opportunities to learn and engage, and that's really important. That keeps it fresh. That keeps it exciting. And to get to the top of the profession in terms of your years of experience, you might be very specialized in one area, or you might be able to be very general and very comprehensive in practice and weave it all together. So there's a lot of room to grow, no matter what stage you're in.
I love the dimension that Michelle brought in, which is the improving learning over time. And I think that's another big advantage of the principles of good practice, so that we're not all on our own as individual practitioners trying to keep track of all these different areas of practice and bring them in over sort of bunch by bunch by bunch. Instead, we're engaging the experts within AIHA to keep track of how the science evolves and to keep those principles of good practice evergreen, so that as a practitioner who has a question about, oh, I need to start a respirator program, how do I do that? I can pull out that newest, freshest version of the principles of good practice and tick through those critical few things that I really should be working on to ensure that the workers under my care are well protected in that respirator protection program. I am extremely excited about the direction that our profession is taking here for the near term and the long term, and the role that AIHA is playing in helping our profession move forward, both in terms of the training and the tools and the assessment of the ability to use those tools that we have in the improving exposure judgments initiative, but also in the principles of good practice that are just now being delivered. We're going to see more of them over the next coming months and years. And I'm extremely excited about how that positions us to better protect workers, both in an effective way and in an efficient way, and to be better positioned to communicate to the stakeholders, the people that we need to partner with in order to ensure safe and healthy workplaces, about what it is that we need to do, what it is that we're doing in order to protect those workers, and how our partners can play with us effectively to make sure that protection is in place and working well.
Michelle, closing thoughts?
Sure. So in 2020, AIHA embarked on the Defining the Science initiative, which was the first of 4 advancing the OEHS science and practice initiatives that, thanks to John's leadership and the board of directors at the time, they had embarked on a way to continuously improve the practice of industrial hygiene. And we've done that through these 4 initiatives. And as John alluded to, we have not only the Defining the Science, improving exposure judgment accuracy, we have the principles of good practice, and the state of the art versus practice. The state of the art versus practice is this great tool, survey tool that we're using to reach out to practitioners to find out what they're doing in their actual practice, not what they know. We've done that in the past many, many times. We're really good about ascertaining what people know and what they need to learn. But now we're looking at what do people actually do. And then with that information in hand, referring back to the principles of good practice document, we can look at what gaps exist in our practice and what tools we need to improve that. So that is the genesis of the continuous improvement plan that is in effect. We are starting with exposure assessment strategies, and we've come up with a couple of things that we can do in the next year or two to advance maybe a 10-year long goal to lift the profession up in this, in our ability to better assess exposures, to better evaluate those exposures, to better control them, and to see that we are really truly protecting worker health beyond that of a compliance basis. It's really exciting to see that happen, and we're going to see this repeat itself with the respiratory protection and noise and hearing loss prevention PGPs that have been completed. Those surveys close in mid-December, and then we will have the continuous improvement plan updated to reflect those gaps that we find in those areas. And we see this repeating itself, kind of a plan, do, act, check process as we move forward.
Interesting times,
Yeah,
indeed.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
exciting.
so it's really exciting. So Michelle Twilley, John Mulhausen, thank you so very much for taking the time out of your busy days to join us here on the Healthier Workplaces show and talk about these great, important topics.
Thank you, Bob. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
So that's our show for this week. Until next time, I'm Bob Krell. Stay healthy.